We have, for a number of years at the Kiwanis Club, been hosting series of candidate forums. The sponsors, we've the three local media outlets, KLYC Radio, McMinnville Community Media, which operates a pair of public access cable channels, and the News Register, the local newspaper, have teamed up to help to sponsor these, and one of the benefits is it ensures broad coverage. KLYC is live streaming it and does a lot of promotion for us, and News Register, of course, will be covering. We've got Nicole Montesano, our county reporter, out here somewhere. I see you, she's over the side there. And McMinnville Community Media will be airing multiple times on 11 and 29, I think the channels are, depending whether you have Comcast or Frontier. Today we're going to have the county assessor candidates, Derek Wharf and Jeannie Sandlin, both have significant experience in the office. We flipped a coin, and Derek will be leading off. We'll alternate. Each one will answer each question. We'll give a chance to answer each question. We'll have an opening statement and a closing statement when they're done. Next week will be the district attorney candidates, and the week after that, which will be the Thursday ballots go out, will be the county commissioner candidates. We'll wrap up with those, and we'll follow the same kind of format and drill. Our moderator last several years has been John Gray. John was a longtime Yamhill County Chief Counsel, headed the legal team at the county, and he's also a student of public affairs, somebody who's knowledgeable and has a reputation for being incorruptible, we think, and unbiased. So I've leaned on John to lead the questioning. Last thing I want to mention is just that we have little slips of paper on each table. John has questions, and he'll fill the void if he needs to. But we invite anybody who wants to fill out a slip of paper. I'm going to kind of keep my eyes open for hands going up. If somebody has a slip they want to turn in, I will run around and pick them up and feed them to John. It's up to his judgment on what ones to slide in and when, and he'll take care of the questioning. But if you have a burning question you want to pose, you have that opportunity. Okay? We have the candidates maybe come up, we'll have them sit here, and we'll have them step to the podium to answer questions. And Derek will lead off with a opening statement.
We ready? Okay, first of all, big thanks to the Kiwanis for hosting this. Larry and Steve from the paper putting this together. I think it's very important that we take these opportunities to help educate our public about what is a very complicated and often referred to as the most complicated tax program in the nation. The Oregon tax law is difficult to administer, and it means typically something different to each property owner, and that takes some time to help educate and get folks up to speed on what it all means to them. So thank you for hosting the forum. I appreciate the time to speak with you guys today. A little bit about myself. My name is Derek Wharf. I'm the current chief appraiser for Yamhill County. I was raised in Yamhill County, graduated from Willamina High School in 1993. My bachelor degree in business management with a minor in economics. While at Western Oregon University, I started a career in banking and finance at the local branch. Post-graduation, I followed up with that and was in banking for 15 years. I left banking as a senior vice president of commercial lending for 2 regional banks headquartered here in Oregon. And
And my wife and I live out in Newburgh. We had our first child and decided something closer to home would be a better suit for us. I pursued my General Certified Appraiser designation. That allows you in the state of Oregon to appraise anything. And from there, I applied with the county after doing some private work on environmentally sensitive stuff. Got a job at the county and have been there since 2012. And I really enjoy the team we have. I enjoy the aspect of putting together a fair and equitable appraisal program. And I appreciate and understand what it means to the folks of our county. So I'm thankful to have the opportunity to run for assessor and for the opportunity to be with you today. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jeannie Sandoff, and I am running for Yamhill County Assessor also. I started in Yamhill County Assessor's Office in 1990, started as an office specialist too. I did the real and personal property returns. I also did all the data entry for the appraisers. After about a year, I decided I wanted to pursue being an appraiser, so I entered the appraisal training program. After 1 year, they decided they were going to do cutbacks, so I was allowed to take the test. Since I did have a degree, I was allowed to take the test, pass the test, and then continued on there. As I continued on, I was given many responsibilities. Besides just doing general appraisals, I also handled the I also handled adjusting market values each year, creating the ratio report each year. In 2010, I left, and I've been looking to get back into this field for quite a few years, and the opportunity has shown itself at this time, so that's why I'm here today. A little about my history. Prior to working for the assessor's office, I kind of had jobs here and there. I did what I had to do to pay my bills and those things. I grew up in Sheridan, graduated from Sheridan High School in 1981. Went to Linfield College after that and received a degree in 1985 in accounting. And again, like I said, I kind of found jobs that I had to take because I had to pay my bills. And when I got to the assessor's office, I loved it, and I would love to be back there. And one of the things I think we need to do in the assessor's office, first of all, I'd like to educate the public so they know what to expect and they know how to. Is it over? Am I done? Oh, okay. I didn't know if that's what this meant.
You don't have
Thank you.
Go ahead and stay up there, Jamie. You get the first question.
Okay.
Number one, what are the three most important characteristics of a good county assessor?
Equitability, accountability, and timeliness, getting the job done on time.
Thanks. All right, Derek. You got a chance to think about that for a minute.
And the limit on these responses is 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Thank you.
You want the question again?
No, thanks.
All right.
So, Jeannie pointed out a couple there, the trustworthy, fair and equitable, transparent are words that come to mind. But to elaborate on that, the idea of equality in a program is to ensure that you've got the right people in place performing the tasks with the right tools to put together a program that you know is fair and equitable to the citizens of Yamhill County. Not every person's property is obviously it's not identical, but the law applies differently, and there's ways where without good oversight and competent people and a comprehensive understanding of the rules that govern the program, you may not realize that you're putting together something that is inequitable. So equality is very important, fairness, treating everyone the same. The Office of Assessment and Tax is not a policy-making position or office. We administer the laws and rules that have either been voted in by the public or laws passed in Salem or resolutions locally. There is little room for finding loopholes or any sort of, I don't want to say handout, but any sort of favor to be given to a property owner. You got to treat everyone the same. That's the fair piece. And recognizing that this is a non-policy making position and we adhere to the rules that have been given to us is essential. Transparency, if you come in, the budget is a public document. I think understanding where the money goes and comes from and how it flows through the office is important. If someone were to have questions about their particular property or the larger picture of the budget, it would be an open door concept. You got to make sure you can explain where it went, where it came from, and where it's going. And I think that is important from the transparency aspect. Thank you.
Okay, Derek, you get the second question first.
Stand.
Had to wait until you sat down.
Isn't there supposed to be music played when you bounce around the chair?
All right. At a social function, you are introduced to a couple who recently moved to Oregon from another state. They tell you that where they lived, property taxes were based on the actual value of the house. They just got their tax bill, and Oregon seems to be assessing property differently. In 2 minutes, how do you explain the Oregon system to them?
Hopefully I have a business card in my pocket. Well, to be frank with them, a responsible buyer has a lot of due diligence to do, and it's their burden to understand what the property tax program is. Once they get to the point where they've done some basic research and understand we have some key measures that drive the assessed value, the taxable value, at that point, I would take the opportunity to really educate them in a comprehensive sense as to what are the elements that put together the final tax bill. And really that's what folks are most worried about is what's their tax bill, what are they paying taxes on? So it would be extremely different from any other state to come to Oregon. First of all, recognizing that and understanding that they're going to have some hurdles, but assuring them that they've got resources at the assessor's office to help them if they're speculative on a property or if they actually just bought the property. We're there to do that. We're there to provide that service. And one thing I really enjoy as one of my key functions as the chief appraiser is to do just that at the counter with the folks who just bought the house and want to know, why is my tax bill X? And walking them through the fundamentals, bringing it down to their level and how it applies to them. Those are all things that I enjoy doing, and they get a sense of relief from that. They're now educated and informed. I much prefer that than they buy the house and get their first tax bill, and they're unexpected. It's unexpected, the number is unexpected, and then they often come in with a different mindset, maybe not as open to understanding how we got there, but a little more upset about why we're there. So the opportunity to educate is important. I think it's a valuable tool that we have in our office to share with the public and essential to getting folks to really understand, how the program applies to them. Yeah.
All right, Jeannie, just to refresh you meet a couple from another state, and they can't figure out why Oregon isn't like their state. So in 2 minutes, how do you explain the Oregon system to them?
I would explain to them, first of all, every state is different. Some have property tax, income tax, and sales tax. Oregon has income tax and property tax only. I would explain to them that Oregon does not tax directly on market value anymore. In 1997, they created what's called the maximum assessed value, which was based on 1997 values minus 10%. And that would increase 3% each year. Now, in the case, it doesn't mean that their market value has no effect, because if their market value goes below the assessed value, then they would be taxed on it, which is why we need to be doing something to get those market values in place where they should be. I don't think most of the county has not been reappraised in many years. I know our place hasn't been reappraised since 1996, and I know just adjusting it based on sales of the area does not make it a complete accurate picture, which also brings up the idea of people realize that if they have a question of their property, such as the value of their house or the condition of their house or the condition of their outbuildings, they should come to the assessor's office and ask for an appraisal review, and that should be able to be used to adjust the values to where maybe they should be. If they just appeal the value, then the value that's appealed goes down for 6 years. At the end of that 6 years, it's going to go right back up. That doesn't mean that value, if they do the appraisal review, it doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, because that appraisal review is still based on information from 5 or 10 years ago. So it's not going to be completely accurate, but will be better. And that's what I would explain to them, what they need to do when they get their tax statement.
Thank you. Third question is for Jeannie. We'll get this figured out by the 8th question.
Yeah.
Some people criticize the Oregon property tax system as unfair. Are there any changes to state law that you would support to improve our property tax system?
I'm not exactly sure why they say it's unfair, except for the fact that people who have a bigger house and more property pay more tax, which makes sense. Farm and forest deferral properties, of course, pay less tax because they're supporting a community. They're supporting farms, or they're doing something that supports the community, such as raising crops that people can eat, raising timber for houses, those kinds of things. I don't know exactly what else they would say that it's not fair. There are exemptions in place that maybe some people don't believe exemptions should be allowed for some different community things, such as, churches. Maybe people think churches should pay property tax, and schools should. Schools, it doesn't make sense for a school to pay property tax, because then you would be taking the money out of the property tax to pay for the school. It would just be like them paying themselves, because the property taxes are used to support the schools. As far as the other exemptions, I believe if somebody is an actual charitable organization or a museum or something like that, it should be exempt, especially if all the money that they use goes right back into their organization, such as the churches do. The churches don't go out and buy big fancy things for their people. They just use the money they need to pay the people that work there. So I don't see that it is an unfair system, because I believe the people who have the most pay the most.
Thank you. Derek, are there any changes to state law that you would support to improve our property tax system?
That's the same question, correct? Okay. Yeah. Without the pre-op. So, one thing that comes up all the time is there are people that are very concerned about the quality of the Oregon tax program, and more specifically the implication of Measure 50. And Measure 50, it's known statewide, it's not an equitable program, in the sense that if you have two houses built side by side, same house, same quality, you're not going to have the same tax bill. And that just intuitively doesn't make a lot of sense. But the law that goes into that, the Measure 50 calculations that determine the taxable value, they're complex, and they have variables that don't apply the same to every property. So I understand the frustration with our current system is somewhat unfair. I would refer to it as unequitable in some cases, and there are just unintended consequences from Measure 50 now, 20 some odd years later, that they didn't anticipate when when the law was passed originally. So we have issues specifically to Yamhill County. There's challenges with folks that are in special deferral programs, and the fact that they may have a large maximum assessed value and real market value, but given the deferral program they're in, they're not paying nearly what somebody who's out of deferral would pay. That seems pretty straightforward. If I would propose a change for something specific, it would be more along the lines of how we grant deferrals. And the intent of the deferral program when it was born and how it was made and how it's being used and applied for by some other citizens that are looking just for tax relief, but not necessarily farmers. Small hobby farms, really small forest holdings under 2-3 acres. The deferral program wasn't put in place for that purpose, and yet it's being used that way. So there's some inequities in it, and it comes from both the Measure 50 attribute and also how we give deferral for certain property owners.
Right there.
Okay.
Next question.
I got the hook.
All right, you're the assessor now, and you've been concerned about a lack of productivity by Mick, an appraiser who is the union rep for the office. Another appraiser told you that she thinks Mitch spends a lot of time surfing the internet. You have the IS department do an audit of his computer use. You discover that he is spending about 3 hours a day looking at non-work related issues on the websites. How do you proceed?
Thank you, John. Well, 15, 20 years of management experience, I've seen a lot of variations of that same concept. And what I believe as a manager and as an administrator of a program is that you're setting expectations first for employees. And those expectations are tangible. They can see the numbers that are required, or if it's the project that needs to be finished. And then I hold people accountable to finish those jobs. So two things are going to come out of that scenario. If someone's spending 30% of their time not doing work, they're not going to finish the project. And so it's going to come to light a couple different ways, if not from someone telling me, or if I had a hunch and wanted to solidify the concern, I may go to IT and run some reports and that sort of thing. I'm more apt to sit down with this individual and just say, hey, this is the goal and the expectation. You've got to set yourself up for success by dedicating time and focus on that objective. And if you're spending time on your cell phone, tweeting, texting, internet surfing, you're never going to make it. And at that point, we'll meet a couple times a year to do performance reviews. And at the end of the year, when it's the final review, if it goes that long, then we're into a sort of a formal discipline process. And in the union environment, that's a very structured sort of process, the formal discipline and how you go down that path. And it can take a year or two to sort of work things through if you get into that cycle. I would hope that I could find what challenges that employee to keep them motivated and focused. Ultimately, we have a huge job to do every year on an annual cycle, and we need great employees who are engaged, who are challenged, and to get the job done. So turnover is expensive. I don't want to lose folks, but ultimately, if you're failing to meet the expectation, that is the end result after a progressive discipline through the union process. So. Thank you.
Okay. Jeannie, same question. I'll refresh it for you. You've been concerned about the productivity of Mitch. Somebody comes to you and tells you that this union rep is spending a whole lot of time on the internet. You have an audit done by IS, and you discover that Mitch is spending about 3 hours a day looking at non-work related issues on websites. How do you proceed?
First of all, I would just bring him into my office, and if he wants another union rep in there at that time, I would allow him to do that, obviously. And I would sit him down and say, now, I have noticed that you are not doing your work as well as should be expected. You're spending too much time on the internet, and this computer is not yours. It is the county's. It's supposed to be used for county business, not for your personal business. If you're on your break or you're on your lunch, perhaps you can if you have to, but you still really should not use it for county business or for personal business. If he has a complaint and he wants to file a complaint saying I'm unfair with the union, then he could do that. But I would also want to ask him, why are you doing this? Is there something wrong in your, ask him, make sure there's not something wrong in his personal life that's making him or causing him to want to be on the internet, or, I would want to be their friend as well as their boss. I don't want to put somebody out there and make them have to choose between a job or their home. I would want to make them realize that I want to support them and I want to give them a chance to do the job that they need to do. But if it came down to it, I would not wait a year until the end of the year and figure out whether or not he should be gone. I would wait, give him 3 months. If he doesn't clean up his act in 3 months, then we would have another meeting, and I might give him another week. But I would not wait a year. He would be gone probably at the end of that 3 weeks.
Okay, thanks, Jeannie. Next question, you're first. This one comes from the floor, so it's a good question. Should the assessor's position be an elected position or an appointed position? Right now, it's elected. Why is that a good idea? Why is that not a good idea?
Well, I think it's a good idea because everybody in the county, not everybody, but 90% of the people probably in the county pay taxes, and they want to make sure that they know the person in there can do the job, and that it's not just somebody's buddy because they are friends with them and they got appointed to the job. If it's not, then of course it should be going through. If it's not an elected position, it should be just like any other position in the county that is applied for. You apply for the position and the county commissioners look through the applicants and decide who can do that job. There are counties now that do not have an elected assessor because it's considered an assessment and taxation, and they don't necessarily have to be an appraiser to run an assessment and taxation department. So, and I don't know exactly how those counties run it, but I would be fine whichever way they went, but I do believe that the community should have a say in who runs their tax department, and that's why it should be elected.
Okay, thank you. Same question, Derek. Should the assessor's position be an elected position as it is right now, or an appointed position? Why? Why not?
Thank you. Yeah, so this month I'm going to say I want it elected. There are merits to both sides. And having not worked in the public sector for the better part of 35 years, I was naive coming into the assessment and tax office, understanding the complexities and what the whole cycle is about. And there's so many moving parts that require competent people doing incredible feats of mass appraisal, whether it's tackling with brute force, boots on the ground, take all your bodies you can and go after something, or if we're doing more work from the desk, from the office, the level of folks and employees that you need to pull those off was an eye-opener for me. So to that end, I think there's a potential, should you continue down the path of having somebody get elected and maybe for some reason the wrong person gets elected, there is an opportunity to really damage the infrastructure that is the financial solvency of the county and its jurisdictions. Putting the program on the wrong path can be a serious problem. And that would not just reach the county, it would reach all the jurisdictions, the schools and the fire districts and everybody else. So in terms of continuity and keeping operations flowing and building a credible program that year over year gets better, I could see the homegrown, home ruled appointed position working. So I guess I would say that I would lean towards an appointment versus an elected position. I wouldn't have issue with that.
Thank you. You get the next one.
Okay.
A week after tax statements go out, an irate taxpayer shows up and demands to speak to you. She says that she owns a manufactured home and got an incorrect tax bill. She tells you that the Oregon revised statutes, which she's read, says she only has to pay $5, not the $1,500 that's been assessed. How do you explain the law to her and the consequences of not paying her property tax bill?
Well, again, this is one of many educational opportunities right in that window. It's unfortunate that most folks decide that it's time to come in and get educated, if you will, or understand how tax law applies to their property once they get the tax statement, and now they're in a state of usually concern. And you know, that individual may be one of 20 that come through in any given day. And what we've got to do is we've got to step back and say, okay, let's get to the basics of how Oregon property tax law applies to your account and weed out any sort of misconception she has as to what does or doesn't apply. If you're speaking about the ombudsman fee for manufactured homes, the $5 issue, that even goes a step further, because there are some citizens that believe, it's few, but there's some citizens that believe that mobile homes are personal property and shouldn't be taxed as real property. The statute definitely spells out clearly that in the event that your mobile home is personal property, it's taxed like a real property account, in a sense. So there may be some confusion there. I would go back to, this is how these are the mechanisms in place. We have a real market value. We have an assessed value that's driven through the MAV equation, if you will, and make sure that there's no concerns about what we have in those buckets. The one right or appeal right that comes to mind is if folks are concerned about their tax bill, the appeal has to do with their RMV, their real market value. These other components that are put in place through the tax program are more of a mathematical or equation-based process to get you what the tax bill is going to be. So if you're looking just at your real market value and your tax, you're not seeing the whole picture. And educating that person to understand what pieces of the law are influencing their property, their tax bill, and hopefully I get them to the point where they at least understand it. Maybe they're not going to leave happy. Maybe they will. Hopefully they will. But in the event that they don't, they'll at least understand what the components are that brought that together for them.
Thank you. Jeannie, you get the same question. Would you like to hear it again?
No, that's okay. I
Okay.
understand.
So how do you explain the law to her and the consequences of not paying her property tax bill?
Well, I would explain the market value and the assessed value that she has on her tax statement, and explain to her how each was calculated. I would explain to her that the information that she is talking about in the ORSs probably is that ombudsman fee for $5 that does not come into effect on the tax bill. And I would explain to her the appeal process, that she could have us come out and take a look at the property. If she thinks it's overvalued, she could appeal the value. I would explain to her what would happen if she didn't pay it. For a few years, it would just be adding interest onto her tax bill. At the end of 3 years, she may be on the streets if she doesn't pay it. And of course, nobody wants to be on the streets. Well, maybe some people do want to be on the street, but anyway, so I would explain to her what she can do to perhaps lower the value. I would, and explain to her what would happen if she doesn't pay it. And I would explain to her how, you don't have to pay it all at once. There's 3 different dates that you can pay it, so we don't have to have the total amount all at once. And I would just let her know how it works, and I would hope that she would leave happy and content and know what she needs to do.
Okay, thanks. You get the next one. The Department of Revenue has just done an audit of the Amarillo County Assessor's Office. They meet with you to explain their findings. They tell you that the county doesn't have enough appraisers and that you need to hire 2 more appraisers to do the job properly, or the county will risk losing state funds. This isn't going to go over well with the commissioners or the budget committee. How do you proceed?
Well, I would, of course, go to the commissioners and show them the information I got from the Department of Revenue. The Department of Revenue basically is the people that run our office from the state. And if they say we need more appraisers, then I believe we probably do need more appraisers. What I would entertain with the commissioners is, if need be, I'll take a pay cut so we can hire some new appraisers. I don't have a problem with that. I don't need everything I have. I'm the kind of person that if somebody needs something, I'll give it to them. If I have the extra money, I will give it to somebody else if they need it bad enough. So if the commissioner said we can't afford to pay anybody else, I would say, okay, well, let's see what we can do. If we can get somebody in here to do the job for what we can pay them. If not, then I'll pay them out of part of my salary if I need to.
Okay, thanks. Same question for Derek. Would you like me to read it again? You got it.
I think I got it.
Okay.
Thank you, John. Yeah, so, staffing and resources is always a big issue. We'd love to have 4 or 5 more, right? But in the event that it came to a point where we were no longer meeting our duties and responsibilities of putting together a program that was credible, equitable, and so much so that the state had to get involved with their oversight committee. And this actually happened in Yamhill County in prior to 2008. The office was not meeting expectations as governed by the Department of Revenue. They did meet with us and the commissioners and say that they were contemplating pulling funding because what was happening was not meeting the requirements, the minimum requirements of the functions of that office. And that goes back to the ratio reports, the mass appraisal program, the number of folks they had providing, completing specific duties. So the program in general was bad, and the results were bad. So the state got involved. And at that point, it was a real eye-opener. We do need to look at, from a management standpoint, we need to know before the state gets here that we need those extra bodies. We need to know what our program is doing, how credible it is, if there's opportunities for efficiencies in technology, staffing, a different staffing model. These are all options outside of just hire more bodies to keep a pulse on the effectiveness of the program that you're administering. And if it gets to the point where the state comes in, then not only are the wheels off the bus, you can't find them. They're hidden in the poison ivy somewhere, and you don't want to go there. So that would be a sad day. And I would work with the state to look at how we reform our entire business practice, starting with our staffing model, looking at alternatives that would help make us, help us achieve the goals that we know we need to get completed in an annual cycle. And if it came down to resources, that's part of the process. And the commissioners would be involved, the budget committee would be involved, and we would have to look at where we take from to give to, because the dollars are finite, and to take out of one pool means or to give to one pool means you usually have to take out of another.
Thanks. This one's yours, Derek.
Okay.
One of your appraisers arrives back at the office visibly shaken. He'd just been out to appraise a piece of property and was confronted by the property owner carrying a handgun, who told your appraiser to get off the property now and don't come back. How do you reassure your appraiser, and what will you do about the property owner?
Well, that was Tuesday. It does happen. It's a real concern, and our county, blessed it, from the valley out over the hills, and you get up in some very remote parcels. And those property owners may not see people very often. And then to have somebody come out unannounced with I'm in the Assessor badge, there's just times when it happens. So it's not an uncommon occurrence. What we strive to tell our folks is that safety first, always. You've got a sense when you're out there if things are going to maybe get confrontational or escalated. It can be an owner with a weapon. It can be attack dogs or, pets that don't like visitors type deal. So there's all sorts of scenarios where our appraisers, and we talk through training, and we've done training, where they recognize those elements and decide, yeah, this isn't going to work. I'm going to leave a business card in a safe place, and then I'm going to have them call me back, and we're going to set an appointment so that they can take care of either the animals, or they know I'm coming, so they're not feeling threatened and need to holster a weapon of any kind. In addition to that, we have embarked on, over the last couple of years, putting down formal policies and procedures in our office so that it's not as gray of an area. It's more formalized in that we tell our appraisers, look, this is what you're accountable for while you're in the field. And the first one's be safe. Recognize your surroundings, know where you're at. Understand what elements you might be dealing with if you enter a property. And they get it. Their personal safety is important. So we teach it, we emphasize it, and we try to find a way to balance both keeping safety as a priority, but also getting the job done. We can't walk up to every dog that's barking and say, well, okay, we're not going to appraise that property. We have a lot of dogs in Yamhill County if we did that. So alternatively, it's finding a way to make that work, and it's leaving your card, making an appointment, and try to touch base another way.
Okay, thanks. Jeannie, your turn. How do you reassure your appraiser after that, and what will you do about the property owner?
Well, first of all, I would just let them sit down, collect their body of their thoughts, and just give them a minute to calm down. Then I would tell them, don't worry about it. We'll deal with it. You just needed to get out of there and let him fume on his own. I would explain to her next, if it happens again, you just say, fine, sir, goodbye, and back away and leave. As far as the property owner, I would try to, if I could, get a hold of him and explain to him why we were out there. Ask him if there's a better time that we could come out and do an appraisal of the property. If he will not let us on the property at all, we could perhaps get a deputy to come out there with us if it's absolutely important that we get on the property, if there's something that we need to see desperately. But I have had dogs that might chase me away, but usually you can get around the dogs. I've never had a gun pulled on me, but I have had people ask me to leave, and I say, okay, that's fine. I try to explain to them why I was there, why it would be a good idea for them to let me see the property, explain to them all the ins and outs of the program, and let them know that they can call and make an appointment, and we could set an appointment so they know we are coming.
Okay, thanks. Before we move into our closing statements, I just want to say I have about 8 questions up here that are much better than the ones I wrote. I'm sorry, we're out of time. So if you want to ask those questions, I bet they'll be here afterwards. So now we're going to do closing statements. The first one will be by Derek. He'll have 2 minutes. When he's finished, Jeannie will have 2 minutes.
Okay, once again, thank you to the Kiwanis and Steve and whoever else was involved in putting this together. I do appreciate the opportunity to share some of this with you guys. I took on this opportunity to run for assessor in hopes that I could continue some of the efforts that our current assessor and staff have sort of started. It's kind of a flywheel concept. We've got a lot of momentum going our way. We have a huge software conversion coming up this year. It's been underway for almost 5 years, and it will be pivotal in how this office is able to function going forward after the fall of this year. It's exciting in that it has a lot of new tools and opportunities and things we can implement. But I'd like to be a part of that. I'd like to lead this team in a way that will help us continue to develop that fair and equitable program. I want to say thanks to Scott, our current assessor, for his leadership over the last few years that I've been involved directly, and the transparency, making sure that that's key. Our office needs somebody who's going to be competent and capable. I have the skill sets via my appraisal background and finance background and management background to handle what we're headed for. I also believe that there's opportunity on the horizon to both keep us going forward, but then find ultimately a balance between the inevitable tax changes that are coming and a quick, efficient, streamlined tax or appraisal and tax program. It's going to take some work. We have a great staff, and I look forward to the opportunity to sort of shepherd us through that. So thank you for your time today. I appreciate you guys coming out, and I also appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Now, Jeannie, you have 2 minutes to close.
I decided to run for assessor, mostly because I believe the office needs some new management in there. I have known people who have worked there in the past and have told me some of the things, and I just realized that we need to get some new blood in this office. Some of the things that I will bring to this office is accountability, equality. I will treat everybody equal. I will be able to handle the job, even though I have not worked in the assessor's office for about 5 years. I still know the job. I do know a new computer system has come on board, so that is something that will need to be learned. I know they've been working on getting a new computer system for about 6 or 7 years prior to when I left. So again, I know I can do the job, and some of the other things that I do believe that I will bring is information. I do plan to let anybody know that if they have absolutely any questions at all about their property, come in. I will sit down and explain it to them. I also, as someone who will give back to the community, such as I said before, if I have an extra $20 and somebody needs some, I would have no problem giving them money if they need to have lunch or eat or pay a bill. I'm the kind of person, when I go over the ferry, which we do sometimes, we live not very far from it, I pay for everybody on the ferry if I have the money for it. I also support everybody in the community, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to our assessors candidates. Nice job, both of you. Turn it over to Steve.
Well, thank you all for coming, and I hope that we get a good crowd out next week for the district attorney race. Thank you very much.
I want to thank the candidates for coming to this forum today. And I want to remind the members here, Kiwanis is a global organization of volunteers committed to improving the world, one child and one community at a time.
Assessor.